the intro screen. Okay. Are we on the starting soon? If not, why don't we just get into it? Yeah, we're just on. If you unmute us, we might as well just go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Game Over. The Ottawa Senators come out with a 4-0 loss against the Carolina Hurricanes. A tough game. Damian Smith with Maude Schoblocher here. The Sens break up, I guess, their 3-game point streak, which is a nice little streak there, unfortunately, with that tough loss against Philly. But Maude, I'll start with this. Did you expect the Ottawa Senators to win this game here tonight against Carolina, regardless?
No, definitely not. We did a previous game against Colorado that you called a scheduled loss, and this was another one. Especially unfortunate after not getting the 2 points against the Philadelphia Flyers. As this game was still like a 1-goal game until late in the second period, I was kind of hoping, well, we deserved the 2 points last game and we didn't get them. Maybe we can steal a point or two here when we don't really deserve it, but it just wasn't meant to be tonight. For whatever reason, and we'll probably get into it later, Carolina is another state that when the Sens go there and play there, they just have no success at all. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all about the outcome.
Yeah, so I think, there will be 2 more games this year against Carolina. I believe another one is on the road, so they're going to get another shot at this. And we'll talk about how this team's history against Carolina, how they've just been so bad against them. And I think the last time they beat them was November of 2021. They won 3-2. Anton Forsberg made 44 saves that game, and then their last win before that was the game against, I think it was that overtime winner by Kyle Turris, I think in 2015 when Mark Stone went between the legs for Kyle Turris there.
Yeah, that's one of the rare wins in Carolina that actually sticks out in my brain. I do remember one, I think 2 seasons ago, because I was looking up, and last season I think we went 0-3 against Carolina. 2 seasons ago, there was a game where Anton Forsberg made 50 saves, and I think we stole a 3-2 win in regulation. But yeah, other than that, it's hard to name any wins in Carolina. It's hard to remember any of them because they're so few and far between.
Yeah, let's go through the game here. Let's get this out of the way. Let's talk about the refs, right? Because they lost 4-0, right? Regardless. Yeah. And I guess Spencer Martin, the game of a lifetime, it seems like. I don't know how many games he started this year so far, but he is their third stringer, right? And he put up 25 saves, I believe, a shutout, and was he owned Brady Tkachuk tonight. So, yeah, he took care of things there. What did you see from Martin's game, I guess? And what did you see from the refs, too? Because I know it was a 4-0 loss, and I'm a little bit harder on the team than maybe the refs at times. But, that penalty, the disallowed goal, we'll start off with that, came at, the worst time because that was the one time in the game where the Ottawa Senators were turning the corner and they were getting going, right?
Yeah, the fact that you bring up Martin and the refs at the same time is it works pretty well, actually, because it was a shutout. It goes down as officially a shutout for Spencer Martin, but there's a huge asterisk on this one, I think, because that has got to be the softest disallowed goal I've ever seen. Other than goalie interference plays where you're oh, he barely touch the goalie at all and it gets waved off. This was it's weird for a goal to be called off for an infraction on a player and not on the goalie, and I would say it barely even was one at all. That was the point in this game that really turned things, because if that goal stood, I think the Sens could have actually gotten some momentum off of that. It seemed like they were waking up a bit after the lackadaisical start. That first period, I think it was almost double or triple shots for Carolina to Ottawa, but they were closing the gap a little bit at that point when Stützle scored and it didn't count. So that's just an example of NHL referees absolutely blowing a call and changing the outcome of the game, I think. Carolina may still have went on to win the game in regulation regardless. The way the Sens were playing, they weren't able to finish on Martin on any other chances other than that Stützle one. So it's not like we can say we were robbed of multiple goals or anything. It's just it's a bit of a shutout with an asterisk for Martin, because I think the refs really did him a solid there on that one, and he was lucky that that goal didn't count.
Yeah, and so with Svechnikov, right, like Stützle is ahead of him, and so it looked like he sort of just, I guess, tapped his stick and it fell out of his hands. I know the saying is you always have to keep two hands on the stick, right? Regardless.
Yeah, exactly. That's what really bothered me was I feel like most of the time when slashing doesn't get called, it's because the guy who dropped his stick only had one hand on it or was really holding it really loosely, lets go of it easily. And I feel like that's what Svechnikov did on that play. He was just kind of reaching out a little bit with one hand, and he wasn't really making a serious back-checking play on Stützle. It was just like, oh, I'm going to reach my stick in because I'm too far back. Mm-hmm. And when a guy is going to do stick work on you like that, you are allowed to push back a little bit with your own stick too, and usually it wouldn't result in the guy dropping his stick. It's just that Svechnikov was so soft on that play that he just let go, and I guess it was good for him to do that because it completely negated a goal basically off of pure luck of the referees making the wrong call there.
Yeah, because this always happens at the start of the season, right? Where there's a ton of calls getting, like, it's just back and forth, and there's like this term game management, where if one bench is upset about a penalty, then the other bench, the refs, I feel like they might have a little bit of pressure against them, and they need to make a makeup call, right? And I guess the Sens sort of got a makeup call or whatever, but I don't want those, right? Like, I want to win a fair game, and I want the refs to call a penalty as a penalty, right? And we haven't even got to the Pinto thing yet. Like,
Pinto one, like, might be worse, arguably. Like, the other one took away a goal, but the Pinto one might have been even softer of a call.
He didn't even touch him. So, like, I think Perron was going into play a little bit. Like, he sort of knocked into Martin a little bit as well. But where, like, I don't understand. I don't understand where that comes from. I get it. The Sens lost 4-0, right? So, regardless, like, they had a 20% chance of even winning this game, I think, coming into it. But then you also, like, it's been 2 out of 3 games now. Remember the Toronto game, too? They were also not good. And, like, I'll go back to the Cousins' first penalty against the Leafs, right? Where he, like, touched skates with Timmins and he falls over. They call it. And I get it. It is hard to be a ref in this league because it's so fast and you really got to pay attention to the details. It's just, you're professionals for a reason, and you think that they would have a better eye for that, at least at this point of the season. That's really all I'll say, to be honest, because, like, we still lost this game 4-0, as David said.
Yeah,
like, the Sens, he says, like,
it's
they
still
shot
Carolina
themselves.
deserving the win for sure.
I think
it's just
timing.
unfortunate. It's unfortunate that the score wasn't closer because of how the officiating went. Mm-hmm. And I think overall, my point is just that I wish there was more accountability with the officiating in the NHL. They're never made available for questions, and after huge blown calls like that, there's never any repercussions. It's like, okay, you messed up real bad. You're gonna sit a few games. You're not gonna get as many games in the next couple of weeks. It's never like that. You always just see the same officials out there all the time, no matter how the games go. And and you mentioned game management earlier. I agree that I don't like seeing makeup calls. But here tonight, I think it went a little bit the other way with game management, where I felt like after all the yelling and screaming from the Sens and Travis Green at the referees, that they were just kind of fed up with the Sens in the third period. Yeah. Because as the Sens started pushing in the third period, and we'll get to that, it was actually like a pretty good effort in the third period. As they started pushing, Carolina was hooking and holding like crazy on every play where the Sens had pressure in the offensive zone. And nothing was called until I think like the final 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. They called Aho on a offensive zone penalty, so they gave us a little bit there.
That wasn't even a penalty.
Waited. But they waited until the game was like really out of reach with only a few minutes left. I feel like there might be a little bit of an ego thing there where the Sens got almost too angry at the refs, and the refs were like, all right, well, fuck you. We're just going to not call anything for a while. So that's frustrating too. I don't know if Travis Green has spoken to the media yet, but I hope that he has at least a little bit to say tonight about the officiating.
Yeah, sure. Like, sure, even if he gets fined, you know what? He's got 3 more years on his contract after this one. So
Yeah,
I think
he'll
he's
be fine
okay.
for money.
Yeah. So I think that probably wraps up our ref discourse, I think.
Yeah,
For now.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. But other than that, like let's talk about the game just a little bit. Like I don't think that this was their worst performance. I don't even think it was that terrible. Like the start of the game was not good. I think the shots were 14-5 at one point for Carolina, and then the shots just stopped sort of getting to the net. I think the Sens picked it up a little bit more in the second, and especially in the third. They just got goalied at the end, especially with Martin. Albeit the game was 3-0. So you know, Martin he did great. He had pretty much the game of his life there. Did the Sens put a million shots on net? No. But that is the way that Carolina plays. And this was a game where this was 2 of the top performing teams, like in terms of shots and everything, like shots against, shots for. And I honestly think like the Sens didn't do too bad tonight overall. Like I wasn't expecting them to win, but they could hang with them. And that's something to, you know, maybe take as a silver lining.
It definitely is. Since you mentioned the shot differentials, I was doing a little bit of stat polling before the game, so I'll whip them out right now. I feel like it's the right time for it. Obviously, Carolina first in the entire league with the average Corsi for, and also first for expected goals for too. Their Corsi is 60% on average. That's for in total of all their 5-on-5 play on all their games this year, which is really impressive to have a number that high. But like surprisingly enough, the Sens are not that far behind them at 4th in the league for Corsi, 54.25%. So pretty close. And like honestly, considering the numbers and the way that first period went, especially, I was expecting the Sens to just get caved in like they usually do, but they actually kind of lived up to their numbers in the end and made the shots on goal a lot closer. Like you said, something like 14-5 shots on goal early in the game. I was expecting it to be like another 50-20 shot game like Carolina puts up against their opponents all the time. But the flow of this game, we actually turned it around a decent bit in the second half. So I have to give full credit to the Sens for that tonight. That's like my main positive, I'll say, is that they've done a good job with shot suppression and generally getting more scoring chances and shots on goal than their opponents. And against Carolina, who's the best team in the league at that, they actually kept it pretty close. So I'm really happy with that.
Yeah, like this was one of their toughest tests overall this season, right? I mean, you look at maybe the Boston game, but Boston hasn't been good this year. Carolina, no matter what, and we'll touch on it later, they have been one of the best franchises for consistency ever since Rod Brind'Amour became an NHL coach there. So this was going to be hard on the road Saturday night. Like the stars aligned for the Sens to just not win this game straight up. So I'm okay with the loss tonight. Like I'm not happy, of course, but it's like these games happen, and sometimes I feel like the Sens are their worst own enemy because they lose the games on their own. Case in point, Philly. That's more on the goaltender. But tonight, I feel like Carolina plain out beat them. We're gonna talk about let's talk about a positive and a negative here tonight. Who was your top player for the Ottawa Senators tonight? And I'll finish that up as well with the player who you think had the worst performance as well.
Sure. So for best player, I got to go with Tim Stützle. I feel like he was flying out there tonight, especially in the second half of the game. He easily could have had like 3 assists in that third period, but it was just not to be with the Sens' lack of finishing ability tonight, and Spencer Martin putting in a good performance in goal as well. But yeah, Stützle, it's nice to see in a game. Obviously, he did score. That didn't count, but we're going to forget about that. In a game where your team doesn't score, it's nice that your first line center is still like really noticeable out there and creating stuff, because a lot of the times if we get shut out, it's like, well, okay, where were the top guys? But I feel like that was honestly one of Stützle's better performances this year, even though he ends up with no points by the end of it. So I don't know what his stats ended up being on the night. He ended up with 4 shots actually, which is pretty good, and especially the one shot that didn't count. So I'm saying Stützle was my favorite player tonight.
Okay. Yeah, he was dancing no matter what. I think sometimes, like, in games like this where the Sens are down, 3-0 on the road, he kind of just he doesn't give up per se, but I feel like his confidence lacks a little bit, and that's just part of being a young player in this league, right?
Yeah, usually he gets frustrated when in a game like this, but tonight I thought he channeled that energy in a good way and kept creating chances even when we were down 3-0.
Yeah, I think he did a good job at that overall. You even saw with that spin play at the end towards Brady. So he's got his mojo going, and I mean, he even scored, right, technically, so he's got to be feeling good. Now on to your, I guess, worst player of the night. There wasn't a ton of terrible performances, I think. Saw a comment here from Ty Smith saying that Batherson Norris didn't get a shot on goal this game. So that's something to note. The Sens also got, I think, around 25 shots on net tonight. So it wasn't spectacular when it comes to just the amount of shots that went onto the net. But yeah, who was your player who, let's say, a player needs to improve into next game?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know if one specific player really stands out for me, but I think what you said about the second line there, specifically Batherson and Giroux. I mean, Stützle was on their line too, but it felt like Stützle was the only guy doing anything on that line. So the two of them, Batherson and Giroux, I feel like didn't have too much of an impact tonight. And yeah, Josh Norris as well. He has been really good lately, so I don't want to be too hard on him, but he was completely invisible tonight too. So like I was saying about when you get shut out and you're wondering where the top guys were, we noticed Tkachuk, we noticed Stützle tonight. I don't think I really noticed any of those other guys generating much of anything. So I don't think I can pick one player specifically, but yeah, like the kind of secondary guys in the top six, I think were my disappointment tonight.
Yeah. From what I can think, like I think Forsberg was okay. 5-on-3 goal. You know, hard to get out of that really at all. And then of course the other goal where he makes the first save. So you can he did his work there, right? On the Blake goal in the third period. I think it's just up to the players there to cover up the lone man out front, and they didn't do that. So sure, the first goal I was like, are you serious? Because it was the goal right after the Michkov goal from Philly. And you're like, oh my God, here we go again. But he settled in, and yeah, sure, he didn't have an over 900 save percentage, but I think he did okay, and he didn't really hurt the team. But before we go into our second segment, which will be how we match up going forward and how the Ottawa Senators can level up to the play of like a Carolina Hurricanes, because that team has been so good over the past 6 seasons. Please check out our flagship show of the Game Over Network, Hyperdrive Hockey, which is all things hockey across the variety of leagues in the entire world and whatever it is. Max, Daphne, and Kev have got you covered for all your hockey news with a steady dose of fun and fan engagement as well. So you can head over to their YouTube page, wherever you listen to the podcast, and the Hyperdrive Hockey page at thegameovernetwork.com. So let's head into our second segment here.
Let's go.
Let's talk about this is something I wanted to bring up because we've played against some great teams this year. We played against New York, who they rely a lot on their goaltenders. We played against Vegas, who I think they're more defense oriented, but they're kind of spread out a little bit. They got goaltending, which is kind of a hit or miss from game to game. But the Carolina Hurricanes, they have an identity. And they have for 5-6 years now, ever since Rod Brind'Amour came into the lineup or was their head coach in 2018. This team has made the playoffs every single year, and they have been a good one. They haven't won a cup. They've been favorites for many years now. I picked them to win a cup a couple of times over the years, and they just don't do it. But the Ottawa Senators, they need to, as an organization, get to that point eventually. And, it starts with the ownership, I guess. It starts with the GM, and then it fizzles down to the players. It's a broad question for sure, but how, watching this game tonight, what do you see in Carolina's game that Ottawa can sort of emulate going forward? I
think just as a 5-man unit on even strength, they're it's really impressive how they're able to be super aggressive on the forecheck and chasing the puck carrier in like pretty much all zones of the ice, whether it be like in the offensive zone or in the neutral zone. There's always a guy directly on the Sens player who has the puck, and they made it really hard on the Sens to move the puck properly and make the right decisions with the puck because there was just so much pressure. But not only that, it's that combined with the fact that they really did not give up any odd man rushes tonight. I feel like usually when a team is pressing a lot like that throughout the game, eventually you'll end up with some scenarios where, the defenseman pinches up or all the forwards are caught way too high up, and then it's a 3-on-2 or a 2-on-1 the other way. And we really didn't see any of that tonight from Carolina. So the capability to be so aggressive on the puck and also not give up any like easy chances on the rush the other way is what really impresses me about them. And in the third period too, as soon as the Sens started pushing, they gave up a 2-on-1 pretty quickly. And I was like, okay, you don't see Carolina doing that. I feel like the Sens are getting closer to the way Carolina plays. They're almost like a bit of a model for how we'd like to see this team play, I think. But they're not quite there yet. And you saw the difference here tonight.
Yeah. Like they're there, they are there. They're in the conversation at least, but it's not something. I know it's like telling fans to be more patient. But I kind of have to say it because you can't sort of change a coaching strategy of a game over a year, right? When you look at the transition from Jacques Martin to Travis Green, like it's going to take a little bit more longer for the Sens to maybe find their identity. I think I sort of know what their identity is now at this point of their season, and it's a pretty good one so far. But yeah, like the Hurricanes have been good for so long. They have made it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons in a row now, and even this year, people thought they might have fallen off a little bit because they lost a lot of UFAs. You look at like Teravainen, you look at Gensel, who am I like on Pesci, who is like a key
defenseman,
player.
Pesci, and there was another guy too. There was another defenseman, Brady Shea as well.
Shea, and
that's like 4 major pieces.
Yeah, like those are top 4, top 6 defensemen as well. Top 4 defensemen. Chatfield stayed. But then they like sort of replaced a couple of those guys with analytical darlings when you look at Sean Walker and Shane Gostisbehere. And it just seems like this team has a clear identity, and that is they will just grind you down. They will be pretty physical, nothing crazy, but their forwards are just smart, like so smart. And they know how to keep possession. And there's a reason why they have the most shots in the league. It's because you saw at the start of the game, they like took shots from everywhere. But then also their forwards rarely make a mistake. Because they're all, first, maybe they already were developed like that way. And, the Hurricanes identify that. And they do a good job. And I mean, their GM is Eric Tulsky, who's just like the leader of analytics basically in the hockey community. And then they got Rod Brind'Amour, who's there to teach you the good things about playing hockey and playing the right way, and he really gets to them. And then eventually they sort of fizzle in the playoffs, and it seems to be the final 8 around there. They got swept by Florida 2 seasons ago, and then they lost in the second round this year to the Rangers. So they can never really get over the hump, I think. And it's kind of it's a couple of things. I think it comes down to they're high in scoring, and then sometimes they're goaltending. It's something just doesn't seem to work. But this has been arguably, like, when you think about it, has there been an organization more consistent than the Carolina Hurricanes over the past 5-6 seasons? Like, you could look at Boston, I guess. Sure. Tampa Bay, maybe. I know they don't have a cup, but Carolina has really stayed up high in the standings pretty much every single year.
Yeah, in terms of the regular season success, they've been like one of the best teams for a while now, and you have to think that eventually they're going to break through in the playoffs. I think they've had 2 or 3 trips to the conference finals where they haven't been able to make it through. I think they got swept by the Bruins a few years ago, and then they got swept by the Panthers, and then against the Rangers last year. Did they beat the Rangers last year?
No, they lost.
How that went.
They lost. They
lost to the
Rangers,
came
right?
Was that second round? second round.
Yeah, they were down
Because I was like,
3-0.
wait, they weren't in the third round this year. I don't know why I thought that was third round. But regardless, that was a series that honestly Carolina should have won if it wasn't for Igor Shesterkin. That series was like exactly what you expect from Carolina in terms of just dominating the shot clock and the scoring chances, but they didn't have the better goalie, and that's something that's going to happen in the playoffs from time to time. Especially with the way the Canes play. It's kind of funny with how the Sens had the game against the Flyers where they absolutely dominated, and then Ullmark sees no shots for the whole game and then lets in 5. This kind of happens to the Hurricanes too with the way that they play. I have noticed with especially with Pyotr Kochetkov, who's been one of their main goalies. He would have been starting tonight if he didn't get injured last game. I've got him on my fantasy team, and what I've noticed is that they have a lot of games where they only allow like 20 shots, but then he gets scored on 3 or 4 times just from like defensive breakdowns.
Yeah.
And that makes me think it's a little tough as a goalie to just stay like mentally on top of your game the whole time when you're not seeing the puck too much. It's almost like Carolina is so good at shot suppression that it makes it a little tough for the goalie where they get caught napping a little bit, which I think is kind of funny. So I'm sure it was a big topic of discussion last game about how that happened with Ullmark. I want to point out too that this does happen to the Carolina Hurricanes as well. And sometimes you got to give the goalies a bit of a mulligan for a bad night because just when you don't allow a lot of shots, it's probably tough for the goalies to stay focused.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see here. Like, I'll ask you a question too. Like, what do the Sens have to do a little bit more to maybe get up to the standard of the Hurricanes? Something you think you could see them like changing overnight, that sort of thing, because the players' mentality and just their habits, it's not going to change overnight. Right? It's gonna take maybe even the whole year, maybe 2 years, whatever. What's something you think that the Sens could change, whether it be in their lineup, like, I don't know, taking O'Hamonic or something. That's the easy one. Is there anything like that I'm just not thinking of right now that the Sens can do to get up to that level? Because they've performed really well defensively this year. And it's weird. Like, I saw on Twitter the other day, they're 6th in odds to win the Stanley Cup. But that's
crazy. But that must be just off of Corsi alone, right?
Yeah, like it has to be based off of, like them playing good on the ice. Like the players have been like they've had their off nights, I guess, but they have been good this year. Like I have no issue overall with their performance. It's just been little moments, right, where they lose their points. And goaltending at times. I mean, I wasn't on the game for the Philly game, but oh my goodness, Ullmark. But that's a topic for another day. Or we can just throw that in the past. But yeah, like what do the Sens have to do to just get up to their level? Just this year at least.
Well, as you mentioned, the Hamonic thing is like the easy one because I think the thing about the Hurricanes defense is that they're pretty much all puck movers. Like they don't have the closest thing they have to a pure defensive guy is Jaden Chatfield, but even then he's like miles better than Travis Hamonic. He's a guy that can actually keep up with the play compared to Hamonic at this stage in his career. So I really like how Carolina is super focused on the puck moving ability of their defense, which is probably contributes to the low number of shots against is because they can just move it out of their zone so easily. So I like that, and I think the Sens are trending in that direction, especially with the acquisition of Jensen. I think most people didn't really know going in how good he was going to be with the stick handling and the puck movement, but he's been actually really good at that. So I think the acquisition of Jensen is kind of like how they brought in a guy like Sean Walker. I think that's pretty similar. Like I feel like that's a guy that you could have seen Carolina picking up if they needed to, is Nick Jensen would fit in perfectly on that Hurricanes blue line. So I think the Sens continuing to sort of model their blue line, how Carolina has done it, would be really good. And also just the depth on offense. They don't have the best superstar forwards, although Marty Necas has a lot of points so far this season. We'll see if he can keep that up. Yeah. But like guys like Jordan Martinook, I would love to have him in my team's bottom 6. It was a fluky goal that went in tonight, but that's a guy that can chip in pretty frequently. And Jordan Stahl as well, just solid guys in the bottom 6. Jack Roslovic somehow has 9 goals. He's kind of their Adam Gaudette this season, I guess. But like really overall, I think the Sens are close. Like we talked about those advanced stats. I feel like there isn't too much that they need to do differently to
No.
get on Carolina's level. Obviously, Carolina's been doing it for 5 straight years at this point, so the record is what, 12-4 this year. The Sens are not going to rocket up to a record that's that good this season just because they're close in advanced analytics. The Canes have been here before and they know how to do this. They know how to get through a regular season, but the Sens are still learning that. At least they're learning to control games, and I think that's a huge step forward. I honestly think that in terms of play style, if we're comparing the Sens to the Hurricanes, the Sens are close. It's just that the results aren't here yet, and there's various reasons for that. Different things go wrong on different nights. So hopefully we can see them string some wins together soon here. Because to be honest, to your question of what do they have to do to get closer to Carolina's level, I feel like it is already quite close.
It's not like, okay, it's not far. And, we could have looked at teams in the past, like, let's just say 2023 team, the year that they sort of were close to the playoffs in 2024. Like, 2 seasons ago, their power play got them to, like, their power play helped out tremendously. And then when it came to their, the next season, it was, a lot of issues there. Oh, it looks like we have potentially lost Maude here. But I'll just continue.
Hey, my laptop shut off.
Oh,
I don't know why.
Okay.
So here I am on my phone. I'm turning the laptop back on.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay, sounds good. No problem. I'll ramble on, and then we'll head on to the third segment here. So
Cool.
But yeah, just to finish that point there, they're like the 2023 season, the Ottawa Senators had, I believe, a top 10 power play that carried them to a very good position overall in the standings. And then eventually, the next season, I don't know, last year, things were just sort of all over the place as Maude is back, so that's good. And this season, it seems like it doesn't seem to be like some really, it doesn't seem to be a factor that is really killing the team overall, whether it be the PK. Like the PK is getting better. I think it's around middle of the pack. The power play has been good. It's a little bit different on the road, but the percentage still looks quite good. Top 10 power play. And the Corsi looks good, and the defense looks good. And their goaltending, well, there's been some great moments, and then there's also been some bad moments. And that's the one thing you could look at as like, okay, Ullmark has not been the best so far this season. And that is, I think, what is going to be the key to the season, whether they make it or not. If Ullmark can get it going, this is a team that could push for a playoff spot. There's an opening in the Atlantic right now because you can see in the 3 spot right now, I think Boston is in there. However, it's possible that Tampa Bay is passing them at this point.
Just checked and Tampa moved up, but they're tied. So and also Boston has played 2 more games than the Sens, and they're only ahead off of 2 loser points.
Yeah.
So it's close. It's close.
There's a bunch of teams. I think Buffalo also lost tonight. Detroit was losing to LA last time I checked. So there's an opening there. The Metro is stacked right now. New Jersey, Washington as well, the Rangers, and of course Carolina. So there's 4 teams there. And then the rest of the teams in the Metro, when you look at Philly, they're probably going to drop off. Columbus, not going to make it. Pittsburgh, sucking. And I'm blanking on one team here. The Islanders, right?
Yeah, Islanders in that mid-level right next to the Sens.
Let's see, maybe they scrape it out, but that's a team that the Sens are also going to be battling towards the end if this thing sort of continues on. But yeah, any final words there on that? If not, I'm just going to continue in the next segment.
Let's throw it to the next segment.
Okay. I just wanted to talk about La Ruche, because Game Over is obviously an independent production based on community, inclusion, and quality people. If you're interested in supporting the Game Over network, we have crowdfunding available in the description of this episode, and you can find a link on our Patreon page. And we're also looking to get more through La Ruche with the crowdfunding platform for companies originating in Quebec. So, if you would like to support, we deeply appreciate it. Now moving on to the last segment, I guess, before we head into OT, where we can read all your comments and your questions in the chat. So if you have an opportunity to do that, please do. Let's talk about the goalies. I think you want to talk about this a little bit more because it's a new year. It's a new tandem for the Sens, and I guess let's start off maybe with a little bit of the performance of Forsberg tonight. Overall, do you think that he had a good night? Did he hurt the team a lot? And heading into Tuesday against the Oilers, I think we sort of know who the starter is going to be. It's probably Ullmark. But what are you seeing? What are you seeing so far? As we're almost 25% into the season here.
So in terms of Forsberg tonight, obviously that first goal was ugly, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but I think I can't fault him too much considering that was the only goal that went in until I think the last minute of the second period. He held them to only one goal for basically the first 40 minutes. Even though it was an ugly one, he stopped all the other shots, and as we were saying earlier, Carolina had most of the shots in the first half of the game, so keeping them to one goal at that point is good overall. I can't blame him, especially since then, after that, the two power play goals. I think the second one, or I don't remember the order of them, but the one where Blake scored, it was like they got three shots really quickly and we just couldn't clear the rebound from out in front. So the goalie does all you can ask of him there.
Yeah.
And yeah, then the other one being the Aho one-timer, that was just a tough one off the face-off. I think most goalies aren't saving that. If he did save that, it would be like, oh, save of the year candidate, like swing the glove above your head. Statue of Liberty style. So yeah, I think Forsberg wasn't bad tonight. I feel like if Ullmark was in net, it probably would have been a similar result. I don't think he would have necessarily like stolen the game for us, especially since we didn't end up scoring. But I want to kind of talk about the decision to start Forsberg tonight, because I do wonder if Ullmark, coming off of that really bad performance, I get that you probably don't want to go immediately back to him after a bad performance, but also I kind of don't like that he's sitting on that bad performance for like 5 straight days, and then he has to face the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid in the next game back. So to be honest, I think I would have preferred to see Ullmark back in the net tonight just to see if he could get his mojo going back again, especially against a team like Carolina who throws the puck on the net a lot. I was talking earlier about how with the style that the Hurricanes and that the Sens are starting to play, there are going to be games where your opponent doesn't get very many shots and the goalie is going to be cold, and that can be tough. So against a team like the Hurricanes, I would have liked to see Ullmark in there and seeing how he does while actually like facing more shots than usual. So yeah, like, do you agree with that at all, or are you totally fine with the Forsberg start?
I'm kind of in the middle, to be honest. I actually, when you talk about Carolina putting a lot of pucks on net, I think that's actually a very good point where Ullmark could have used those shots, because man, that Philly game, like the Sens just dominated again, right? There was another game where they just straight up carried the play the entire time. Philly picked it up later on, but still, like, Ullmark straight up lost that game. Like, I'll say that it was on him. And okay, so I'm flip flopping it, because at the same time, like, these are two veteran sort of goaltenders. They're 31, 32 years of age. They're not kids, right? So I feel like at this point of their careers, they should just kind of be ready for anything. Like, they should be ready for, if the other goalie is going to get hot, then you got to get ready to sit out a little while, because that goalie is playing damn well. But at the same time, you have a point where it's like 5 nights, and also he's our starter, right?
Mm-hmm. That's the thing too, is we've given him the $8 million contract, and I get that he's been in a tandem situation before, so I don't necessarily mind the two of them rotating starts if it's bringing success, but so far it hasn't really been, as Ullmark has been really inconsistent, and he did play 3 games in a row there. The first 2 were good, and then the Philly game was colossally bad, so I don't know, maybe 3 games in a row was too much for him, who knows? Maybe I've got that wrong. I don't know,
like, if you're a starter, it's changed over the years, right? Like, remember, I think it was Holtby played 70 games a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we're never going to see that again.
No, and like Brodeur played 78 one year. Patrick Waugh, Hasek, like, they all played in the 70s back then. And now it seems to be a 50-30 tandem, unless you have like a Shesterkin in your net, right? Where you go in 60 and 20. So I hope they do the 55-25 split. That's where I'm set on, because Ullmark has to prove that, if you have $8 million, you got to play up to that snuff, and you got to play, you got to play 50 games,
with a contract like that, it kind of has to become sink or swim past a certain point where you just have to play him. And especially, I think I mentioned this before, but just the fact that Forsberg is an upcoming UFA and Sogard on a one-way deal next year. I'm not really sold on Sogard as an NHL goalie full time, but regardless, I don't think the plan was to bring back Forsberg for next year unless he just is absolutely lights out for the rest of the season. So I feel like you've got to I don't think you should be playing the UFA goalie as much as you're playing the goalie who you just gave an $8 million extension to.
Yeah, I think it's important maybe to just lump not Forsberg, Sogard into this conversation right now, because just for the time being, he's injured and he's out like another month, it seems like.
That's the problem, is with the injury, he can't really raise my hopes or expectations on if he will be an NHL goalie. So it's tough for him right now. If he's injured for most of the season, he probably isn't getting that backup spot next year just because he hasn't played.
Yeah. Question in the chat from Mark Cienkita. I hope I'm saying that right. Do you think that Ullmark is playing his play so far, is it a mental thing or is he just straight up not playing well? I'll throw that to you.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably a mental thing overall. I think just because of these couple of games where he hasn't been getting a lot of shots on goal, I think it's the cold goalie issue. But also, you do have to wonder, coming back from that injury too, he missed 2 weeks in the middle of October there, and then he was a little bit rusty when he came back. I think we didn't really get a lot of details on what his injury was, but I do have to wonder if that's affected things a little bit as well. But yeah, it's hard to say overall. In terms of a mental thing, when they talk to him in interviews, he seems to always be really level-headed. He doesn't seem to be getting too high or too low on himself. So it's tough for me to say that it's a mental thing because he seems very level-headed, but you never know. There are some aspects where it could just be affecting him mentally.
Yeah. And that's a good thing. I don't want my goalie to be hot. I'm sorry. I could have players on the team that could run hot. That's good for, keeping I think when it comes to the team, you kind of need a mix of everything. You need your Jake Sandersons and your Drake Mathesons, which are players that are just chill and they do the job out there. But then you need your players that are just going to be ruthless, like Brady or maybe Ridley Gregg. To an extent, he's really quiet, it seems like, but when it comes to his play on the ice, he plays with a lot of emotion. Same thing with Timmy, right? You need a little bit of mix there. But my starting goalie especially, I need my starting goalie to be even keeled regardless, because when the pressure ramps up, especially in the playoffs and stuff, if they make it this year, that's a guy you need in the net. But I will say, I was never a goalie playing, and I've never been a goalie, and I've never been a goalie nerd or anything like that. And I'll usually defend the players a little bit more, but also the Sens just straight up haven't had a good goaltender since Craig Anderson, right? But please stop at the bad goals. Please stop with the gold line goals. Please cover your post.
That was another thing I wanted to bring up, because we saw Ullmark allow it on the game-winning goal last game, and then we saw Forsberg allow it on the first game of or the first goal of this game, and I'm both goalies are doing this, and that makes me wonder, is it a goalie coach thing? Is the goalie coach telling them to not go as hard on the one post, when the puck's in the corner, which just doesn't make sense to me. I can't imagine a goalie coach actually thinking that would be a good idea. No. But when both of the goalies are doing it, there's a pattern here, right?
Maybe it's a short-term pattern, right? So that's why I'm not gonna sit here and freak out that the goaltending's been horrible the entire year. No, it hasn't. They've had 3 shutouts. Last year they had 1, I think.
That's true.
So there's been some great moments. There has, and credit the players in front of them too. I think they're blocking a lot more shots this year, but I'm sorry. The next game, I have to see a game where the goaltender has over a 900 save percentage or something like that. And also, if they don't, then don't allow any bad ones, because I'm okay with blaming some of the players, For all we can say, the players have done a really, really good job in front of the net this year. And that's with players like Travis Hamonic, who is a whipping boy for this team, on your back end and has played in every single game this season, which is crazy to say. But please stop with the bad goals. And I'm not talking about the random flutters like through a bunch of players in front of the net, and sometimes they might not see it. I'm talking about the ones that where you got to cover your posts, or the weird shots like from the corner basically that go in. I don't know. It's just you can't make an excuse for it.
Yeah, you're totally right. I think next game, if Ullmark comes in and doesn't at least get 900 save percentage next game, it's going to be really frustrating. I feel like my bar for him is pretty low too, especially because Sens goaltending has been so bad for so long that I feel like if at the end of the season, if Ullmark's save percentage is like 905, I'm happy with that, to be honest. Yeah. Especially the way that the team has been playing. It feels like goaltending of average of 905 would be good enough to get this team a lot of wins. But it's not quite there yet at the moment.
Forsberg was at that heading to this game. It probably will dip to around maybe 900. So, yeah. And when you factor in the LA game, I think Forsberg's had a fine season. Nothing crazy good. But he hasn't hurt the team really for the most part.
Definitely better than last year though. Like last year he finished with like a 879 or like something really bad. So like close to 900 for him is a big improvement. So like to be honest, like full marks to Forsberg. Other than that first bad game against LA, which was just a crazy game. Every goalie who played in that game was bad. Like really good overall for Forsberg, to be honest, compared to last season.
Yeah. I'm anytime Ullmark's in the net though, I look forward to the game. And I have trust in this goaltender. I don't think there's a way watch they find a way, but I don't think there's a way we can like break him, you know? Like I think every time like we've acquired a goaltender, they just come in and they might have some great games in there. Like Matt Murray had some awesome games, but then he has some terrible ones. Korpisalo, a little bit more on the terrible side. But
yeah, I don't remember too many good Korpisalo games.
Nah, I think it was sort of good timing for him that he got that bag there. And I'm not accusing them of, you know, letting off the schneid a little bit when you get that money. But you know, it could be a coincidence that he had a great season in a contract year, you know. But that happens with some players. It happens for others. I don't know. But yeah, anything you want to throw in there until I head into overtime here, where we can read your comments and your questions. If you have an opportunity, please drop in the chat. We'll also go back in the chat as well to read them, and we'll go through it. If not, I'll head into the ad read here.
Yeah, let's get to the ad read in the chat, and also I'm just gonna die, but go ahead with that ad read.
Okay. So yeah, looks like we got we're back here. All right.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm still here, just lower quality. Don't worry.
We just wanted to tell everyone about our merch as well, where we have an apparel line available right now for all the Canadian markets out there. There is a ton of stuff available, whether it's hoodies, shirts, mugs as well. You can just head to Game Over Network website and check out some available merchandise there or gifts there potentially available, and if you want to give it for a Christmas present or something like that coming up with the holidays, or Black Friday if you want. Although I know there's a strike, there's tons of strikes going on for Canada Post. So
I don't know who we deliver with. Hopefully not Canada Post. I don't even know.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes on. But if you want to support the community, please head to our website and make a purchase if you like, but we just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, let's head into overtime here, our final segment. Was there any comments or questions in the chat that you found there that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, I'll go with this comment from Kelly first. They said, I love that even with less than a minute left, Timmy and Brady were still trying to score. And we have to applaud that as well. Like I mentioned earlier that I think Timmy and Brady were the two forwards tonight that were really creating stuff compared to some of our other top six guys. Were more quiet. But yeah, down 3-0 in the third period. And even after the empty net to make it 4-0, they were still pressing. I feel like they felt like they deserved more out of this game that they didn't get. And I love that they didn't give up. They were going until the final whistle. Especially Tkachuk. Like there was that chance where Spencer Martin made the glove save and he was kind of throwing it in Tkachuk's face, like, oh yeah, here's the puck. it's not going in. But just the fact that like that's a little embarrassing. But the fact that Brady was still trying really hard to get a goal on the board for his team there, and Timmy as well. I think that's a positive from tonight too, because a lot of the time in the past, especially last season, when this team gets down by a few goals, it often spirals and it becomes like a blowout final score. But we really haven't had that happen this season. Even in the games where we've lost or we've gone down by multiple goals, the team fights till the end in pretty much every game, except for a couple ones.
The
I think
Buffalo.
the Montreal and Buffalo road games are the only two where they didn't do that. But I think what this is game 17 or something at this point. We've had 8 losses in regulation. Only 2 out of those 8 losses in regulation were games where it felt like the team was actually like really out of it and not really pushing so much at the end. So I think the fact that this team has still pressed really hard when they're behind in losses, even though obviously we never tied the game with the goalie pulled. So if we did get a couple of goals here today, we know we weren't getting overtime, but I think that's a positive for the Sens.
Yeah, I also liked. I mean, you kind of touched on it, but like Brady just not like. I know it's one thing to run the goalie and stuff, and like really get in his face, and he was throughout the game here. Like there were times where he would just shoot the puck on net, and he would literally stand right in front of Martin. And not even
Yeah, he was
look
trying to
at
get in his head.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, he took his L tonight, but I also like that he just, in years past and a little bit of times so far this year, Brady has just, in the past, I don't want to call it a tantrum, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep, definitely.
he gets frustrated because he's competitive and everything, and he's the captain, and he's just a physical player, and he has to let off some steam before he heads into the dressing room. And he didn't do that tonight. And I actually kind of like that. Like, you lost the game 4-0. The goalie played good. He shut you out. There's no reason for you to start barking at him or even give him a little shot on the pad or anything like that. You know what? Give Martin the game. Give him the shutout. I saw him like celebrating at the end. He's a third stringer. He's battled his entire career, and he had a shutout tonight. He had an NHL shutout. That's an impressive thing, regardless whether it be 45 shots or it be 20. And the Sens didn't put a lot of shots on tonight, but I like the way that Brady responded there, and I like that at least from what we saw, we didn't see a ton of frustration from the team, right? Because they've been playing well, and there was a time, what was the game? It was against the Islanders, where we were literally talking about how they were getting frustrated when the game was 0-0, right?
Yeah,
and
it was still close.
Yeah, and that didn't happen tonight, it looked like. They stuck with it, and they didn't play terrible. They didn't play the best, but I like heading to the next game, I know we play Edmonton, which is a little bit nerve-wracking in a way, but I feel confident. Like, I'm not dreading this game coming up against Edmonton on Tuesday.
It's the type of thing where the way that this team has played overall, regardless of the results, I'm gonna be always nervous going into a game against Edmonton. But it's like you have a bit of faith that we can hang with them at least. I think.
For sure. Okay, let's get to Ty Smith here. 4 nations coming up. Do we cheer for Canada or cheer for Brady? Let's start off with that one. There's a following one as well that I'll get to. But let's start off with that. So I'm just going to say sit up to Canada. Like you could even lump Sanderson in there. He can make the team. Or Norris, maybe. But that's if he like plays amazing and they need a specific player. But yeah, I'm gonna pick Canada.
Yeah, the Canadian loyalty going over top of the Sens player loyalty for you there.
Yeah, and even if it comes down to like a final, if it was the U.S. and Finland, I think I would still pick Finland.
Oh yeah,
I think just because of the rivalry.
I think I would have to agree. It's hard to go against Canada, but I do have a little bit of like that part in me that's like I just want to see the Sens players do well, especially on like the national stage. So like if it comes down to Canada USA final, give me like a Brady Tkachuk hat trick, but Canada winning 4-3 or something like that. It's hard you can't really ever root against your home country. I find like I mean sometimes with fucking how bad hockey Canada is, maybe you should, but in terms of like player loyalty, I think the country still takes precedence over top.
And then follow up, chances of Bathurst and Giroux. I guess let's lump in Shabbat here too.
Yeah, I was gonna say Shabbat.
Yeah, so those would be the contenders, I think, for Canada. Um, your chances, like, let's give it a percentage or whatever for each player.
Canada is just so deep that like even though
Yeah.
Giroux is still like such an elite player, I don't know like if he can even like
I
make the cut.
I
What do you think?
I thought about it. The Batherson conversation, I remember like in the Olympics, like in 2022, there was a moment where they were going to go, right? And he started off really hot, and we didn't really know what his ceiling was yet with Batherson. And people were talking about, it's like, oh, could this guy be a Team Canada player? But there's a lot of pedigree on that team. So Batherson, like, I don't think it's going to happen because if you want a fourth liner or something, it's probably not your guy who is being so defensively in his career and is sort of like not a power play merchant, but not known for defense or face-offs. So I don't think that I'm going to give it like 2%. With Giroux, I would say like 10, 15, maybe. That's not high at all, but he's a great face-off taker. This is probably his last chance to do it, if that factors into anything. And he kills penalties and stuff, and he's a right shot, so that helps. He could be an extra body out there, like, I think potentially.
The penalty killing ability and the face-off ability I think could make him useful on like fourth line or 13th forward, but it's so tough with how deep Canada is that like I was just looking up a list of the active Canadian NHL forwards, and like Giroux is third all time in points among the active Canadian forwards.
Yeah.
But like the thing is, with so many good young guys coming up, I don't know if in his old age that he would still get selected. It's tough.
What about Shabbat? That I think there's a little bit better of a chance because he's played great this year. Wasn't great tonight. I think he got caught on both power play goals. But he has a chance because you look at the left side, it seems like it's going to be Taze with Makar probably. And then you got Theodore in there with maybe Pietrangelo, albeit Pietrangelo is older now. And I know there was like talk about Darnell Nurse or like Travis Sanheim making the team.
I feel like Shabbat should make it over either of those two guys, to be honest. Yeah. Unless they really want some grit from Darnell Nurse, but like
that's what they'll want though. That's the thing, right? Because Shabbat, it's unfortunate because it's Team Canada, right? Like, and you look at like a guy like Shea Theodore, he's 2 years older, he's a Stanley Cup winner, he can play both sides, he's scored more. That's the comparable right there. And you can't just have a team of skill. Like, you got to have some penalty killers and even some grinders. Like, that's why they're talking about Tom Wilson making the team. But I don't know. I think Shabbat, it's like 20% I'll give it. Sanderson, I think, has a higher chance because of the defensive factor.
To take a quick look at like the left defense options for Canada, I feel like Josh Morrissey is like easily the number one.
Oh, yes.
And then in kind of like the murky middle of players who are like on a similar level, I feel like you have Morgan Riley, Shea Theodore, and Shabbat, to be honest, all together. And kind of like I could see any of them making it. Because to be honest, the right hand side is more stacked. Like, I guess the thing is Devon Toews as well. They're going to want to have Devon Toews to play with Cale Makar. So that kind of just removes a spot on the left already there. But I think he's in the mix, which is awesome to see because Shabbat's had an up and down career for the Sens, and it's nice that he's trending upward again.
Yeah. He's had let's just talk about his start so far this season. I mean, we might as well. I've really liked his game so far, especially in the last 10 games. So it started off a little weird, but it was a couple games. And him and Jensen got to keep that pair together like the entire season. They work.
That should not be broken up at any point.
Yeah. I still don't know if he's like a penalty killer, but that's just me looking at the game tonight. I would like to see Clevin get a little bit more reps out there, I will say, because that's why he's there. Like, if Clevin's with an offensive puck-moving defenseman on the third pair, maybe you don't give Clevin a little bit I don't know. Like, it's tough because he's 6'4", he has a great stick, and he's a big body out there, and he's a defensive defenseman. He's been it his whole career, and it might take a little bit more pressure off of Chabot in certain situations, I think, where, you know, it would be nice to see Clevin get, instead of 50 minutes a night, maybe 15 or 16 or 17, you know, take a minute or so off of Chabot.
You know, in terms of taking minutes off of Chabot, I was almost kind of thinking that I might like to see Chabot getting more minutes than Sanderson lately. I know that was the whole big issue the last couple seasons, was like, oh, we need to see Sanderson playing more than Chabot because Chabot's overworked. But I feel like Sanderson's been in a bit of a rut lately, and I wouldn't mind it. Fucking NHL.com is shitting the bed on me, and I can't open up the box score is just empty, so I can't see what it is tonight. But in terms of the ice time share, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know necessarily if they need to cut minutes from Chabot. With how good that pairing has been with Chabot and Jensen, I almost feel like they should be getting the most ice time lately. Just because even since Zub has come back, Sanderson and Zub are still kind of getting back into the swing of things of playing together. So I don't know. I kind of wanted the opposite, but I do agree that Clevin, we could give him some more minutes. The only problem is that comes with giving Hamonic more minutes at the moment. If you get JBD in there, then I'm on board with that.
I just want to be on the PK though. Like, I mean, Clevin, I think he's I think he's like a +1. He's got 1 point. It would be nice to see a little bit more offense, but at the same time, if you have JBD back there, then Clevin's going to get more points. And you got Hamonic back there, so there's virtually no offense on that third pair, right? You have two defensive defensemen out there, and I don't know, maybe it's because I've like played video games and stuff on NHL and everything, but I feel like two defensive defensemen out there with two guys that have never really been puck movers on the back end isn't really going to be a recipe for success. Like, I agree. Know. Maybe that's just me. Like, I haven't been an NHL coach and stuff before, but
yeah, the coaches seem to love Travis Hamonic. So what do we know? Yeah. Just to correct myself as well, I did end up finding the ice time on Natural Stat Trick, which is a better website than NHL.com that doesn't even function half of the time. Natural Stat Trick, thank you. Thomas Chabot played 2 whole more minutes than Jake Sanderson tonight, so they actually did give him the bump, and Nick Jensen had less minutes than Chabot, probably because power play, but even a lot of the time on the power play, Sanderson has been on that first unit, and I do like him there. But Chabot is getting that ice time up, so I do like to see that.
I will say, like, it doesn't, in years past, there's always been a disconnect between the coaches and the fans when it comes to, like, you know, like I know the coaches isn't going to listen to the fans regardless, unless they like have a huge protest at the game or something, or like they're screaming something down for like 20,000 people, right? But that doesn't happen. But like the only thing that I can really nitpick about is having Hamonic in the lineup, and that is the third pair D. That's your sixth defenseman, right? So, like, that's the thing that I think there's been a lot to agree on from being a fan, and as well as having a new coaching staff who could have done the same things that the old regime did, but they haven't so far, and I like that. So, and yes, I'm just reading some of the comments here that Darnell Nurse got injured tonight from a Ryan Reeves hit, we will call it.
That was rough.
However, we still got, I think, around 3 months until the Four Nations, so there's some time there and stuff. I didn't realize the NBA Cup was on. Not gonna lie, I didn't. It's really early.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, that's, I guess, their version of the Four Nations, their second season doing it. But yeah, that's pretty much all from me here tonight. Unless you found any other comments in the chat that you want to highlight here.
I think I'm probably good to wrap it up. I think that was a nice cohesive episode, even though I dipped in and out with my cameras. I think we covered a lot. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, and it's these losses will happen. I think with you and me, it's like we're 0-3 for our record.
Yeah. I don't remember whether or not I said this at the beginning of the show, but I meant to, is that since the first 2 games of the season that I did, which was the Florida win and the Kings win, the Sens have lost every game that I've covered for Game Over. So I'm starting to feel like I'm the bad luck omen, especially because the past like 5 losses or so that I've covered, they didn't even score until like late in the third period in any of those games. Like
Yeah.
the Devils game, they scored really late. The Rangers game, they didn't score till the third period. They didn't score at all today. The Colorado game, they didn't score till the last 10 minutes. And then the Islanders game too, they didn't score till the last 10 minutes. So the Sens don't like to score when I'm on the stream. So I'm getting bad juju, bad vibes whenever I'm streaming, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, we'll hope it gets better. I mean, like, I'm confident in this team going forward. And this is the most, I feel like, level-headed I've been in a loss so far this season. There's been a fair share of them. I have a good record with the others when it comes to Nick and Charlie.
Yeah, it's all me.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, hopefully it gets better from here. But thank you very much for everyone joining the chat tonight. I know it's Saturday night, so probably a lot of you were out on the town or whatever. I know it's 8 p.m. here in BC, but 11 p.m. for you guys. So thank you for everyone for joining, who decided to as well. The Sens lose 4-0, fortunately, to the Carolina Hurricanes. But they have been playing some very, very good hockey, and let's hope that they can scrape out some wins here in the next couple of games, because they got 4 games coming up at home against some tough opponents, but we will see if they can make it work. So thank you very much for tuning in, everyone, and have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.